The first thing you notice isn't the beauty, it's the thirst. Not the kind you feel in your mouth, something wider, a pressure in the city itself. A heat that sits on stone and roof tile and makes even shade feel thin. Somewhere above us, a fountain is still running, but the sound is wrong for a place like this. Too confident, too constant. Water doesn't behave like that inside walls unless somebody is forcing it to. And if that forcing ever stops, if one channel cracks, if one gate is held shut, if one crew doesn't show up, then the city doesn't just get uncomfortable. It starts to die in place. I want you to walk with me through Constantinople at the moment it's becoming something new, still Roman in its bones, already Byzantine in its habits, when keeping people alive isn't only about soldiers and walls, but about something quieter, moving fresh water across a peninsula that never had enough of it. We're standing on a triangle of land pressed between seas. It's defensible, it's busy, it's loud with trade and footsteps, and it's dry. No great river cuts through it. Just a few small springs, a thin stream that's barely a river, and then long summers where the sky simply refuses to help. That's the weirdness of Constantinople, a capital built to command the world, planted in a place that can't naturally feed its own mouth. So the city does what empires do. It reaches. It reaches west into Thrace, into hills and forests and limestone country where water hides underground, and it builds a system that doesn't just bring water in, it makes water predictable. It turns rainfall and springs into routine. Keep walking. We're moving uphill now because elevation is everything. In the ancient world, pressure is gravity. If your water arrives too low, it can't climb to where people live, where the baths steam, where the palace drinks. So Constantinople's water has to enter the city high, high enough to spill, split, and drop into everything below. Ahead, the city's logic shows itself in stone, the aqueduct of Valens. It doesn't feel like a pipe. It feels like a bridge for a river that isn't allowed to be seen. A line of arches stretched across a valley, carrying a flow that's been traveling for days through covered channels, tunnels, and smaller bridges we never celebrate. People pass beneath it, carts roll under it, conversations happen under it, while above, the city's lifeline glides along at a shallow, stubborn slope. What surprised me the first time I really understood it is how little room there is for drama. No steep drops, no roaring waterfalls. Just a precise decline, about a meter over a kilometer, so the water stays moving without tearing the system apart. It's not romance, it's control. Now imagine what it means that this bridge is only the last visible gesture. Out beyond the land walls, the channels run mostly underground, vaulted corridors just tall enough for a person to climb inside, with shafts cut down from the surface so workers can descend, scrape out silt, patch cracks, and keep the flow clean. You don't see them, but you feel them in the city's confidence, in fountains that don't apologize, in baths that assume abundance. We're going to follow the water the way the city does, by moving through the places that depend on it, one after another, like organs arranged around an artery. From the aqueduct, the flow doesn't simply pour into the streets. It's stored, held back, saved for the months when the sky turns mean. Because Constantinople's problem isn't only not enough water. It's not enough water when you need it. Summer arrives, springs weaken, and suddenly a city that looked stable starts rationing itself. So, listen carefully for this. Constantinople doesn't trust the aqueduct alone. It builds memory into stone. We walk toward the great open-air reservoirs on the higher ground, huge rectangles of masonry designed to sit full for long stretches, like a lake that can be locked. The Cistern of Philoxenos is one of them, a massive, open container placed high enough that its water can later be fed downhill into neighborhoods that will panic without it. If that reservoir runs low, it isn't just a public inconvenience. It means bathhouses go silent, latrines stop flushing, Fire becomes a different kind of enemy. Crowds begin to move toward the remaining sources, and movement inside a packed city can turn ugly fast. And now, keep with me, we turn back toward the denser heart of the city, where space is expensive and every courtyard has already been claimed by someone important. This is where Constantinople does something that still feels almost excessive. It puts lakes underground. We descend into the covered cistern, not as a metaphor, as engineering. Brick vaults, rows of columns, walls lined with hydraulic plaster, so the city's own storage doesn't bleed away into the earth. You can tell these places were built to last, but also to flex. Wooden tie beams once linked the arches, so the structure could move as one body during an earthquake instead of snapping apart in sections. And because this is a city that thinks about siege, about the day the gates stay shut, the cisterns aren't optional. They're strategic. Water stored inside walls is morale stored inside walls. A little farther along the route the engineers seem to prefer, the water is being guided toward the main spine of the city, the Mies, the broad central street that ties districts together like a seam. The channel can follow that gentle grade, distributing along the way, feeding fountains and baths, breaking into smaller lines that disappear into neighborhoods. But our walk is going to end at a particular kind of terminus, a place that feels like an exhale after a long, controlled breath. The Cistern of Philoxenos. People later call it Byzantine, 1,001 columns, but its real power isn't poetry, it's placement. It sits not far from the column of Constantine, close to the Mies in the crowded Second Hill area where water demand is relentless. And it's high, higher than some other major cisterns, meaning it belongs to a specific supply line, one that can actually reach it by gravity. This cistern isn't just a tank, it's a distribution nerve. A castellum divisorium, the kind of endpoint storage that doesn't merely hold water, it divides it. It turns one incoming flow into many outgoing promises. Think about that word, divides, because a city at scale is really an argument about who gets what first. Water doesn't go everywhere equally. Not here. Not in any capital. When the system is healthy, the decisions are invisible. When it isn't, every choice becomes audible. We pass through the districts that reveal priorities, places where water isn't a luxury, it's a performance. The great public display fountains, the nymphia, are where the empire demonstrates that it can command nature, that it can make abundance appear on demand. There's a reason the aqueduct's completion is tied to the commissioning of a major nymphaeum. The city isn't just supplying itself, it's staging itself. And then there are the baths. A bathhouse isn't simply hygiene. It's heat management, social order, routine. It's where the city turns water into steam, turns steam into comfort, turns comfort into loyalty. The baths of Zeuxippus, so close to the imperial core, drink heavily, and if they go cold, people feel the change immediately, like a signal flare that something has shifted above them. Here's the quiet truth. A city can survive hunger for a while, but when water becomes uncertain, everything else becomes negotiable. Food spoils faster, disease spreads easier, fires become unstoppable, and crowds do not wait patiently for pipes to be repaired. Now I want you to pull back from the street-level sensation and feel the system as a living thing. Outside the walls, the aqueduct lines originate in two main water regions near the city, Halkali, about 15 kilometers out, and the Belgrade forest area farther north. And beyond that, the long-distance lines reach deep into Thrace. Constantinople, for a time, is running on water that began far beyond the horizon of its own daily life. This is the Roman habit at the edge of becoming Byzantine, the belief that infrastructure is fate, but fate needs maintenance. Edicts exist because people steal water. They divert it for irrigation. They cut side channels. They take what pressure they can, because every garden and workshop wants the same thing the palace wants: reliability. The fact that laws have to say, "Stop taking it," tells you how tense the system already is beneath the surface. And maintenance isn't poetic either. It's crews, plaster, bricks, laborers hauling lime and mortar, clearing sediment, walking long stretches of covered channel with lamps and scraping tools. When an aqueduct is cut in war, the city doesn't just repair a monument. It rebuilds the ability to live. There's a later memory preserved of a massive workforce assembled just to bring the water back: masons, plasterers, clay workers, brickmakers, pulled from different regions like a military levy, because in a city like this, water restoration is a kind of campaign. And if the water doesn't return, cisterns and baths stop functioning, springs dry up, the city tightens, then hollows. I want to stay in the Valens era feeling, this moment when the system is ambitious and still believes it can outbuild scarcity. So here's the system's breakdown, not as an explanation, but as a walk through consequences. Food first. Constantinople is fed by ships, by markets, by an empire's reach. But food requires water at every stage after arrival. Bakers need it, street vendors need it, livestock needs it. And when water is rationed, the city doesn't just eat less, it eats differently. Cheaper food, drier food, food that keeps. The mood changes with the menu. Water second, obviously, but not just drinking water. Water for washing is health. Water for latrines is sanitation. The Romans understood that constant flow, especially from baths, could be used to flush waste away, keeping dense neighborhoods from choking on themselves. Interrupt that flow and the city doesn't merely smell worse, it becomes dangerous to inhabit. Control third. Who controls the valves, the distribution basins, the timing of release from storage? Whoever holds that control holds the city's throat. A cistern like Philoxenos isn't just a tank, it's a point where someone can decide whether a district stays calm or starts moving. Movement fourth. Because water dictates where people go. If neighborhood fountains slow, footsteps get longer, queues form, tempers sharpen. The city's circulatory system becomes literal, human bodies moving to compensate for failing pipes. And once movement becomes necessity rather than choice, you can feel how quickly order can slip. That's why the storage is everywhere. Why more than 200 cisterns exist across the Byzantine city? Because the city is trying to break a single point of failure into many smaller ones. One cistern dry is a problem. A network dry is a collapse. Now for the scale shock, the part that reframes everything. This water supply isn't an aqueduct. It's a landscape-long machine. Research estimates a network of channels stretching for hundreds of kilometers, comparable in total length to the combined aqueducts of imperial Rome, but achieved in a much tighter span of time, built because the new capital couldn't afford to be a sketch dying of thirst. And the material commitment is almost absurd. To build the bridges and channels, the stone required is estimated in the millions of cubic meters. This isn't just construction, it's the reshaping of hillsides into a continuous promise of flow. Try to hold that in your mind as we return to street level again. People in Constantinople wake up, walk past the sound of fountains, bathe, drink, pray, argue, work, and most of them never see the intake points in Thrace. They never meet the surveyors who found the springs. They never crawl inside the channels to scrape out sediment. They simply live inside the assumption that water will arrive. And that is what the Valens aqueduct era really is, the manufacture of assumption. A capital can fake many things. It can borrow statues, rename streets, declare itself eternal, but it can't fake water. If the flow stops, the empire's language changes. The city's posture changes. Even the silence changes. Because a city without running water is a city listening for trouble. So as we end our walk, I want to leave you with a thought that doesn't settle. Constantinople built storage under its basilicas, under its courtyards, under its busiest districts. lakes in the dark, because it understood something simple. The most dangerous enemy isn't always outside the walls. Sometimes it's a dry summer. Sometimes it's a cut line far away. Sometimes it's the slow, quiet fact that an imperial city sits on a peninsula that never wanted to feed it. And that makes me wonder, when you build a capital on a place that can't naturally keep you alive, are you proving your strength? Or are you building a city that will always be one broken channel away from remembering what it really is?